Jesus freak here, and I know some things I've said might have rustled up a bit of controversy, so I'm going to bring up a few things I think. I know that some people said that, oh, you should follow the Old Testament law to the letter, and then others say, hey, no, that's for the people of the Old Testament. And I'm going to say that a lot of the Old Testament, New Testament relationship is more nuanced than people are willing to admit. I mean, it's obvious that Paul didn't foist Old Testament law on the Gentiles, even going so far as to say that, people who were chaining themselves to the Old Testament laws have fallen from grace. And some people would say, well, your interpretation of the relation to the Old Testament to the New makes you an antinomian. I don't believe that there's complete absence of law. I mean, it's pretty clear that there is some sort of law in the New Testament, and some of it even overlaps with the Old. There are some cases, I mean, we all know those cases where the New Testament softens up on stuff like, kosher laws and such. There's actually places where the New Testament is stricter. The Old Testament allowed for, polygamy, for divorce and such, and the New Testament completely redefines marriage in such a way that, that polygamy is defined as fornication, where in the past it was accepted. So honestly, I tend to be of the opinion that something that's said in the Old Testament without some sort of parallel in the New, and notice my specific use of that phrase, without some parallel in the New. There are some things that are paralleled. Doesn't necessarily mean anything, because I see the Old Testament more in the light of, you have to understand this for the New Testament to make any sense. Now that I've said the controversial stuff from the left perspective, this is going to get a bit controversial from the other perspective. For example, while I think that a lot of the moral codes in the Old Testament have to do with purity, non-miscegenation, and avoiding practices that were associated with pagan fertility rituals, a lot of this stuff does still hold up. And I think it's made pretty clear in the New Testament the point of a marriage, the point of a deep relationship like that. And my opinion is, this traditional family structure you get rid of that, you have all sorts of problems. And I'm not just talking, your mental issues or whatever. I'm talking physical problems. So, even if you aren't holding to any of the Old Testament, you're still going to have to admit that these things are going to mess you up in this world, never mind the next. If you think STDs are bad, that's just the tip of the iceberg. I admit I'm a bit eccentric compared to most of my audience. And I have to be careful because of the rest of the audience, although there's probably only one or two people, but I will stand by my assertions that as far as relationships go, anything other than, traditional one XX, one XY, one man, one woman, in the genetic sense. Anything beyond that's gonna really mess you up. And is this thing that should not be. The thing that gets me controversy is that's pretty much where I end it. But I will at least go that far, or without qualification. I think it was Public Enemies, is that, the parts don't fit. I mean, if one wants to have a strong friendship with someone like that, I mean, David had a friendship with Jonathan that was said to be stronger than love. Some people are going to say, hey, what, he was banging a guy? No! Absolutely not. It was absolutely platonic. There's been a lot of relationships between two women that were stronger than you could have a male-female relationship, but it was still platonic. But people read into things what they want. And I'll admit I'm guilty of this too. We're mortals. We're flawed. There's as many interpretations of Scripture as there are people interpreting it. But there's some things that are just objectively a bad idea. There's a reason that Jesus put so much of an emphasis on long-term, what the Book of Common Prayer worded is, till death us do part. And yes, that's actual wording that was in it at that time. It got flipped around to vulture, but there's a reason for that. It just ain't good for a person, body, mind, or soul, to do it any other way. Jesus freak out.